friends, Queen of Flannel here. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to our first Crayola Crazy video of the month of December in November. So if you did not get a chance to check out my my last video, I will pop a link in the upper right corner. I'm hosting a coloring tag for the month of December, and it is hashtag Crayola Crazy, and you can find the details over on Instagram or in my other video. I am posting part 1 of this a little early. I will be out of town for work on the 1st, and I wanted to make sure that I had part 1 ready to go and out for you guys. And I suppose I could have just waited and posted it on Friday, but I'm kind of on this Monday and Wednesday schedule right now. But yeah, so anyways, let's talk about what is going on here. So first off, I am working in Kerby Rosanes Mythomorphia book, and I'm coloring the Yeti page. So we haven't delved into anything holiday specific yet, but it is a wintry image, and I feel like most people associate the Yeti with, you know, snow and winter. So I am working on the background right now, and I am using Crayola crayons, straight up. Well, the crayons that we all know and love from our younger days. And so this kind of came about, not so much the inspiration for the image, but I bought a set of the Caran d'Ache Neocolor ones, and they are basically crayons for grown-ups and artists, and I think they're a really great product. I use them on a project on my own, but they are expensive, and I wanted to see if I could get similar results with a similar, more affordable product. And so from there, it kind of spawned into this, hey, you know what, let's host a hashtag, and let's focus on affordability. And I could have just said, you know, focus on budget, but even some of the budget brand you know, products aren't really budget. So I just decided, let's go with the gold standard. So right now I am basically just going in and kind of blocking in my colors, and I know that it's pretty light on the camera. As I kind of get into the blending later and adjust some of my camera settings and pull the camera back a little bit, you'll see it's a little bit more vibrant than it looks right now. So one of the things that I discovered in playing with these off camera is that it's really better to start out with a light hand. I know the first, you know, instinct is to just press really hard to get that pigment payout, but it makes it really difficult to blend. I'm sure most of you, you know, have used Prismacolors, and I mean, think about how if you just gouge your Prismacolor into your paper, like, yeah, you've got a lot of wax down on the paper, but it does make it harder to, you know, smush and blend. Even though Prismas are a blending pencil, you still want to layer them to be able to work with them. And so I kind of applied that same principle to the crayons, and it also made it easier, you know, if I felt like I made a mistake and I didn't like how it looked, that I would be able to go over it with other colors, or, and I didn't have to do this, be able to erase it. So this is really just the preliminary stages of trying to, you know, figure out what colors I want and where. And so I think I had about 3 different blues out, and that was about all I ended up using on this. And so I knew that from reference photos, that I wanted those clouds up at the top to have like an orangish hue around them. And because some of the lines, some of Kerby's lines aren't connected, and it kind of made the whole like background, like behind the Yeti and down into the mountains, look like one giant cloud. I kind of had to take some creative liberties, because I knew I didn't want that like one solid block of color back there. And I could have taken a fine liner probably and made some of my own clouds, but I didn't really feel like doing that. So, yeah, so I knew I wanted those clouds orange, but also wanted that to extend into some of the blue from the sky. And I wanted kind of a grayish blue around the clouds. And then off to the right, you'll see here in a little bit, I went with a sky blue, brighter blue in that more open space over there, just for some variation of color. I think is that what I'm doing? No, we haven't quite gotten to that part yet, but that upper right corner where the cloud line just kind of like stops, I ended up going with a lighter blue up there, and then blended it down into the grayish blue and the orange. And I wasn't really sure what I was gonna do with those little like chunks. And I guess you really could go any way. I mean, you could go any way that you wanted with those. They almost look like pieces of ash. And I guess if you wanted, you could make this like a fire yeti, you know, because he does kind of look like he's got like flames coming off of him, what could be flames or pieces of ash. And that wasn't really the vibe I wanted to go for with this. So then I was like, well, I could do them like chunks of ice or chunks of snow. And ultimately that ended up being kind of the direction that I took it. And so I chose to do the background first, because I knew that my decisions on the background were going to influence my color palette for the Yeti. And I do have a reference photo for the Yeti. You'll see a little bit later on. I think I started some of him that you might see towards the end of this video. I can't remember. We'll talk about it when we get there. But it's a picture from one of the Final Fantasy games, and I really liked the color palette, and I felt like I could work with matching that to the background. And that was the other benefit of using these supplies, is I am going to be using the Crayola colored pencils for the Yeti and the majority of the lower part of the image. And so I'm able to match my colored pencils to my crayons. So I've already started on part 2 and doing some testing, and I'm using the same sky blue colored pencil that I am using in the crayon right here. And so yeah, I made some decisions with those little chunks that I wasn't entirely happy with. I don't know if I get to them on camera, but I knew that the black lines around the clouds were a little harsh for how soft the background ended up being. And so we'll see this later on. I went in with my white Ohuhu paint marker, and then I thought it was too white, and so then I went over it with the blue paint marker, and then it was too blue, and I kind of wrestled back and forth with how I was going to kind of like fix it, and I ended up then going back over the blue with the white, but also leaving some of the blue so you can kind of see both. And I'm not entirely happy with how that part of it turned out, but we'll get there in the end. Sometimes, you know, as I start working on other aspects of the image, like an idea will come to me and I'll go back and I'll fix it. But yeah, for right now, we're just layering. Lot of layers. And you'll notice with these that it's really easy to get that wax bloom, similar to what you get with Prismacolors, but almost kind of like on steroids. And so I'll talk about it when we get to the blending techniques that I'm going to use, but they are actually pretty easy to blend out. So I'm kind of bouncing around the page here. Okay, so all right, so we jumped into this. So this is an empty Copic marker that I have filled with Gamsol, and I made a mistake here. I wasn't paying attention. I thought I'd cleaned the marker off. I'd been using it for a project with brown, and it had brown on it, and so I ended up leaving a brown splotch in that corner. I was able to largely cover it up, but ultimately I decided not to use the odorless mineral spirits on camera. I wanted to keep this to... I know that there are people that are strong advocates for using OMS, and then there are people that are absolutely against it. You definitely, if you're going to go that route, want to make sure that you're in a well-ventilated area, and some of us have small spaces. Some of us have spaces with no windows where we just don't have that. Some of us color on our couches in our living room. Now, I do like using the empty Copic marker with the OMS for precision, because I can just throw the marker in my bag and go, and I'm not carrying around a bottle of odorless mineral spirits. But for what I ended up doing on camera, I wanted to keep it simple. And so this is that I'm using now. This is the Derwent pencil blender, and this comes in I believe it's a 2-pack with the blender and a burnisher. And you want to make sure, don't use the burnisher, but this blender it's very dry, and I generally don't care for it when working with colored pencils, but it did a really nice job with the crayons. I think because it's not super waxy, it didn't add any more wax to what I already had down on the page, so it made it easier to blend things out and then layer a little bit more crayon over the top. And you still want to make sure that you have enough wax down on your page before you go in with this. Otherwise, like I said, because it's so dry, if you are heavy-handed with it, or there's not, and if you are heavy-handed with it and there's not enough wax on your page, you will damage the tooth of the paper. So what I found was that when I would hit an area where I could audibly hear the blender scratching on the paper, I knew that I didn't have enough wax down. And so it was easy for me to kind of say, oh, you know, grab the crayon and lay a little bit more crayon down. And if it was an area where I didn't want more of a colored crayon, I used the white, and I was able to get things to blend out pretty nicely that way. And this is gonna have a very like soft, painterly quality to your background. Really, regardless, it's just kind of the nature of the way the crayons look when you blend them out. And now I did use my Gamsol Copic marker off camera to blend a lot of this out, just because my hand was starting to hurt, and it did take me a while. So like this video, sitting here looking at it, sped up and cut, I was able to get down to about 36 minutes, and I probably spent about an hour and a half to 2 hours going back and forth between the crayons and the pencils. So it did take me a little while, but I was generally pretty happy with the results in the end, and I think it'll come out looking really nice once I get the Yeti colored, because I mean, he's kind of like a gruff, you know, aggressive looking dude. So if it ends up being like really pastel, it might be a nice like juxtaposition to the overall like content of the image. So we'll see how he looks when we get there. And yeah, again, it was just a lot of back and forth and layering until I could get the level of pigment on the page that I was satisfied with. And then the other thing I was trying to keep in mind was whether or not I was going to have to go back in, or would want to go back in to any areas on this with the colored pencils, because I knew that it was going to be a fight trying to lay colored pencil down over top of all of this wax. And so the Gamsol marker did really, like, it really washed things out. I don't know if we'll see it on camera. If we do, I'll try and point out where I stopped and then used the marker and then came back to it. But yeah, I used the Gamsol marker and then I had to let the page dry. So it did sit for a little bit to dry while I went in and did other things, and it really did wash things out. And so I kind of had to go back through and repeat the process. And I didn't want to make this video like 3 hours long, but you guys get the picture. It was basically like doing what I'm doing now for you guys on camera again, but off camera. And apologies for the fuzziness there. So the camera picked up it focused on the end of that blender because it's kind of a shiny reflective surface. So I was trying to change the angle of my hand so that you can still see what I was doing. And I'll it'll pull back here before we get into the paint marker. So you guys will be able to see largely what the almost largely final form of this background looks like before we move into the next phase of this. And so and I hope to have part 2 ready to go for Monday. But again, I'm trying to get, you know, a bunch of stuff done around the house before I'm gone for the weekend for work. So largely it'll depend on whether or not I have time to get all that stuff done. And I've been recording in between chores, so I'll record for a little bit and then I'll go do something that I need to get done around the house, and then I'll come back and I'll record a little bit more, and then usually my editing I've been doing in the morning while I have my morning coffee. It's actually worked out pretty nice, especially if I'm doing a voiceover. Because yeah, I'll stitch everything together and then I'll go through and cut what I need to cut, and then I'll do the voiceover like the very last. And it kind of refreshes my memory, so like when I'm doing the cuts and the stitching and all of that, and you know, color grading, I'm rewatching the video and it kind of jogs my memory of like, oh hey, this was what I was thinking when I did that part, and it actually makes it easier for me to do the voiceover. So you'll see right there, I just hit the page with my heat tool just a few seconds. I was just kind of playing around, and I wanted to see if warming the wax up on the page, if it made it any easier for me to blend it out, and it did, but you have to be really careful not to like overheat it, otherwise yeah, it'll like solid, like pretty heavily like melt your wax, and then it'll make it even more difficult to blend out. That was just me. You don't have to do that, and if you don't have a heat tool and you want to try it, hairdryer will work, but it's not necessary. This blender pencil really does a pretty good job. And again, you want a light hand when you do this. I actually found that it worked better if I wore one side of the pencil down, so I had like a little like flat beveled edge on it, rather than like a sharp point. There's less risk of damaging the tooth of the paper, and then I was still able to, you know, keep filling the space in. But I really like the way this is turning out so far. And like I said, I've already kind of started working with the pencils just on like half of the Yeti. I've mentioned this before in some of my other videos, but sometimes what I like to do is I'll work on a piece of an image off camera, and then I'll come on and record the other piece of it for you guys. I know some people will record the first part of it, like if you're doing a bunch of leaves, they'll, you know, record first and then do the other half off camera. But for me, it kind of helps me to have a plan and solidify what I want to do and make sure it's going to work before I come on and do it with you guys. It just, with the way my brain works, it's easier that way. So sometimes, yeah, you'll see, as we come back, like a piece of something is done that I didn't do with you guys. And then usually if that happens, it's because I'm about to do the other half of it for you guys. And then basically just walk you through how I got there. And yeah, so blending, just a lot of blending. I must be on the, like, the additional layers. This must be after I hit it with the Gamsol marker. And messing with the heat tool again. I felt like this just kind of helped me in some of these areas where the colors were pretty different, like the blue into the orange. And see, this is good because as I'm sitting here like watching this and doing the voiceover, it's got me kind of thinking about it changes for my color palette for my for the Yeti and how I want to do that. Yeah, and I'm sitting here looking at what I've done so far, like on my desk. Okay, so this was the pullback, and just so you guys could see what it looked like fully, and I'm just doing a little like touch up blending work. And also I am trying something different in terms of like my recording. So typically what I do is I'll record in OBS Studio, which is what I use when I live stream over on Twitch, and I haven't really been too happy with like the recording quality. And I upgraded my camera. I'm using the Canon M200 right now. And so what I am trying is doing all of my recording right in Filmora, which is what I use to edit. The only thing is, because the way I have my camera positioned, it's upside down in Filmora. So I tend to like glance over at the PC to make sure that I'm in frame, because the okay, brain, the little pop-out screen on the camera uses a lot of battery. So I'm trying not to use that as much. So it is a little weird that it's upside down on the computer and then I have to flip it before I start my editing. But I'm just curious to see if the quality is any better. And it makes it easier because then everything is already like right in Filmora, and I can just save as a project file, and I can work on multiple projects. But anyways, back to the image. So I am working right now with this is one of the Ohuhu acrylic paint markers. I really like these markers, and I hope that they come out with more colors. Hint hint, Ohuhu, if you're watching, more colors of these paint pens. These are honestly, I think, out of all of the paint markers that I've tried, the ones that I feel are the most consistent And the only thing that I would change is potentially the wider nib, because they have two nibs. They have the fine point on one side, and then they have the round for larger spaces on the other. And it's not bad, but I did notice using the black one for another project that it started to fray and had like little hairs coming off of it. So I'll have to see down the road if they do that on the other markers. But these have actually been the paint markers that they live on my desk. I've grabbed for them enough that I want them like easily accessible, and I'll link to them in the description below. And so I did do some work on the background off camera. The lighting, the auto exposure on the camera is picking up the marker, so it looks a little blown out right now. But when I pull my hand back, and there's a little like another pull back at the end, so you'll be able to see how it looks. So really at this point, I'm just going in and going over all of the black lines for the clouds, and I am using it on these little, the little snow ash chunks. And part of me really wishes that I had not used them on those pieces. I ended up not liking the way they looked, so I went over them with the blue marker and liked how they looked even less. So I may go back over them with the white marker. Yeah, I just wasn't sure I cared for how they looked. They kind of got lost. And I did have to make 2 passes with the markers over this, but since I've hit them with the blue and the white marker a couple times now, those black lines are pretty gone. And I had a moment where I was like, do I want to use the white marker on the Yeti? And I almost went for it, and I was like, you know what, let's just see how he looks once we get him colored in. Because I was really afraid like that he would just disappear into the background if I did that. So not quite so sure that I want to take that plunge. Okay, so the paint marker is drying, so while that was drying and I was waiting to be able to do my second coat, I started on some of the pencil work, and I'm just taking, it's from the Crayola 100 set, and this is red orange. And I just felt like around the mountains it needed to be a little darker, so I grabbed the red orange and the regular orange and just kind of started adding a little bit of detail work in there, and then using the Derwent blender to blend them out. And there was a couple spots where there was just too much wax on the paper for me to get any of the pencil down. And I do have texture touch up that I could put on there and try and see if that would give me the ability to get any more layers in. But I really didn't want to introduce any extra tools like that, because I know that's probably not something a lot of people have, and I was trying to keep this really simple and beginner friendly. And I'll get into it more when we do the Yeti and the mountains and talk about, you know, my tips and tricks for using the Crayola pencils. They are a unique pencil. They're wax based, but yeah, I'll get into that in the next video. So this was just adding a little bit of orange around our yeti in a couple areas, and then blending it out into the crayon. So I'm not actually coloring in the yeti, just a little bit around him. And so, yeah, we are coming to the end of part 1, so I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to finishing it up. So if you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified when I post additional content, and I will see you in part 2.